right, so good morning, everybody. We wanted to welcome you all to the VA Caregiver Support Program presentation. Next slide, please. So today we'll be going over several topics, and in a minute here I'll introduce our panel. We want you to really engage in this process with us and really think about what is a caregiver and who are caregivers. We will go over the programs offered within the Caregiver Support Program and then dive into the main part of the Caregiver Program through the VA, which include the Program for General Caregiver Support Services, or PGCSS, and the Program of Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers, which we lovingly call PCAF. Then we will have time for questions. Next slide, please. So to get started, as Angela indicated, my name is Laura Priest, and I'm a licensed clinical social work and the Assistant Chief of Social Work for the Northern Arizona VA. I've been with the VA for approximately 4 years, but have been a social worker for much longer than that, and have worked closely with the Caregiver Support Program, having been a coordinator for the Caregiver Support Program prior to my current role. So now I'll turn it over to my colleagues from Phoenix and Tucson to introduce themselves. Jen, would you like to introduce yourself first, please?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Hopek, and I am also a licensed clinical social worker. I am the Caregiver Support Facility Program Manager for the Tucson VA, and I've been with Caregiver Support for a little over 2 years. And I have been with our geriatrics and extended care, long-term care, and homeless programs prior to that. So I'm excited to be here.
I am as well. My name is Carol Combs. I'm the program manager for the Phoenix VA Caregiver Support Program, LCSW. I've been employed at the VA in Phoenix for 17 years, and I've been part of the Caregiver Support Program since 2016. Been the program manager there for 3 years.
All right, thank you, Carol and Jennifer. Next slide, please. So we're going to dive right into it. So the mission statement of the Caregiver Support Program is to promote the health and well-being of family caregivers who are for our nation's veterans through education, resources, supports, and services. And that's all well and good, but first we really need to be able to define who a caregiver is. Next slide, please. So using the chat, can you guys type in what comes to mind when you think of the word caregiver? If you could put your answers in the chat, that'd be great. I want to see a bit about what you guys think a caregiver is. I see a partner, a CNA, loyal. Right, they're family members, they're friends, they're empathetic, they're somebody who wants to provide emotions and support to other people. They provide services to any given demographic, somebody who cares for another, whether it's paid role or natural support, right? Somebody who supports a veteran, takes to appointments, prepares meals, helps with hygiene, supervision, ambulation. People who are stressed, yes, yes. An additional support, they're invisible, pretty much, yep. These are all descriptions of our caregivers. The definition of a caregiver is really a family member or helper who regularly looks after a child or a sick, elderly, or a disabled individual. So within the VA, we have veterans who require caregivers kind of due to the latter, right? They're getting elderly or they're disabled. So we want to utilize this pop quiz and see how much you guys kind of know about some of the statistics on caregivers here. So hopefully this will pop up for you guys. So question number 1, what is the average age of a family caregiver? We'll give it a minute here. All right. All right, so it's looking like 73% of us are saying 46, 7% are saying 65, and 20% are saying 55 years. So the correct answer for that is the average age is 46. I'm going to stop sharing that one. So another question for you guys. We have a few here. What is the average length of time in years that family caregivers provide care? Is it 2 years, 10 years, 4 years, 15 years? All right. So most of us think it's 10 years, 33% think it's 4 years, and 13% think it is 15 years. And the correct answer is actually 4 years. All right, question number 3. What percent of family caregivers also work full-time? All right.
It's a tie. Oh no.
Yeah, well, it's almost. It looks
Oh,
like
now we got something pulled ahead.
so we have 61% of people, 39% think it's 61%. Nobody thinks it's 20%. 44% of us thinks it's 75%, and 17% thinks it's 45%. And the actual answer is 61% of family caregivers also work full-time. All right. And then question 4. As of 2020, what is the estimated number of family caregivers in the US? Is it 6 million, 48 million, 100 million, or 40 million? All right. All right. So it looks like 29% of us think it's 6 million, 29% of us think it's 48 million, nobody thinks it's 100 million, and 41% think it's 40 million. The correct answer is 48 million. All right. And then our last question is, according to AARP report, caregiving out-of-pocket costs study, family caregivers spend on average, how much money do family caregivers spend on average for caregiving activities? Do we think it's $1,200, $3,200, $5,200, or $7,200? All right. So about 6% of us think it's 1,200, 44% of us think it's 3,200, 31% of us think it's 5,200, and 19% of us think it's 7,200. And the actual answer is $7,200. All right. So that has gone away now, right? Correct. All right. So next slide, please. Y'all did pretty good on that one. So let's get into the pillars of the Caregiver Support Program. The VA's program has 4 separate pillars, which include inclusive care, education and training, trusted partnerships, and service excellence. The Veterans Health Administration is the largest integrated healthcare system in the country. We serve more than 9 million enrolled veterans annually, and the VHA healthcare providers are committed to the highest quality of care for our veterans. According to recent surveys, over 25% of VHA enrollees reported needing the support of a caregiver. These caregivers, the spouses, the parents, family members, and friends of veterans really take on a variety of tasks, which include bathing, feeding, dressing, managing medical appointments, monitoring for emotional triggers, and much more than that. They must also often manage households and take on the role of the primary breadwinner. So I want to break down these pillars a bit. So let's kind of look at inclusive care first. Next slide, please. So the VA Caregiver Support Program partners with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and their Campaign for Inclusive Care, which is the national initiative to integrate caregivers into the veterans healthcare team. The campaign itself is resetting the conversations between veterans and their providers to include a veteran's caregiver. And the goal of this is really to improve the outcomes and recovery for veterans, their caregivers, as well as the provider. So with that, we want to show you this video and would like you to share any thoughts that you have in the chat. Go ahead and play the video.
They're down, but not out. Time is short, and everything is on the line. You wouldn't walk onto the field without the best, most well-equipped team available to you, would you? Of course not. Currently, there are often missed opportunities in clinical settings by not creating a system and practice of more inclusive care teams that equally encompass the wounded warriors, caregivers, and providers. Caregivers can be a huge asset to doctors and other care providers, but only if they're in the game, or rather in the room, when the plans start being drawn up. That's what we mean when we talk about the Campaign for Inclusive Care. The Campaign for Inclusive Care, in partnership with Elizabeth Dole Foundation, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and supported by USAA, is working to shift the culture of care, to be fully inclusive of family caregivers, so that veteran health outcomes are improved, the caregiver experience is better, and clinicians and staff are more supported in their important work. By remembering to CARE, we can make sure that we've got the full strength of our team, caregivers and all, and make sure that we're giving our all to those who have given so much for us.
So inclusive care is empowering. It's collaborating and really coordinating care across the VA. We want to utilize a strength-based approach, and the caregivers know the veterans best. So instead of dismissing their input, inclusive care means really welcoming their input. We want to increase that communication and work as a partner with the veteran and their caregiver. And in turn, providers and their teams can facilitate greater access to services and benefits for the veterans that caregivers support. Next slide, please. So the pillar of education, oh wait, I went through all of that stuff. Okay, so the next slide, please. I missed it. Oh, that one too. Next slide. Oh my goodness, where am I at here? Okay, next slide. I got lost. All right.
I think you're three, but I think you were on education pillar.
The education and training. Okay,
So back to.
back to.
There you go.
Apologize. Okay. So, yep. Nope, forward. Yep, there we go. Sorry, everybody. All right. So the Caregiver Support Program seeks really to enhance development through providing training and support of caregivers, and this enhances caregiver confidence. Education provided to our caregivers also helps the caregivers understand how they themselves are doing, and they end up feeling better about themselves. They experience less burnout, and in turn, they are better equipped to provide care to their veteran. And through outreach and awareness, the VA partners with various agencies throughout the community to provide additional services. If the pandemic had one positive impact, it really made this more readily available to those in rural areas. And I can speak to services available within the community for Northern Arizona. It became feasible for somebody living in Lake Havasu to participate in various trainings that they may not otherwise be able to participate in. Through the Northern Arizona VA. We will get into those topics a bit later, but for instance, suicide prevention training in Northern Arizona is now possible for somebody who lives in Kingman to participate with somebody who lives in San Diego and receive that training that would have been otherwise taken place at the local VA. And for someone living in Kingman, that's a 2.5-hour drive to the Prescott VA. So COVID really thrust not only local VA resources, but community resources out to rural areas in the same manner. Next slide, please. In regard to trusted partnerships, this pillar focuses on advocacy and transparency. The Caregiver Support Program wants to recognize and promote really the role and needs of caregivers, not only in the VA system, but within the community. And in order to do so, strong ethics and accountability are required through policy development and the administration of the program. Those agencies we partner with are a testament to both advocacy and transparency and offer our caregivers vital resources and supports. Next slide. The fourth pillar, the service excellence. Through research, policy development, and stewardship, the Caregiver Support Program is able to innovate utilizing the best practices. We're able to develop and maintain policy, which is aligned with current regulations, and we're able to establish program operations through quality assurance and consistent program evaluation. We have another video for you in the next slide, and would also like you to share your thoughts on that video in the chat box. Next slide, please. Yep, and go ahead and play that. Thank you.
In 2007, Congress enacted legislation that allowed VA to fund limited programming to support caregivers of veterans. From these pilot projects, it became clear that supporting caregivers actually helps veterans as well. So from that came a much larger piece of legislation, which has allowed VA to provide unprecedented benefits directly to these caregivers.
Hey, Matt.
Hello, Miss Hyman.
Good to see you.
See you.
Come on in.
Thank you. How's everyone doing?
Everything's doing good.
I was riding in the back seat of a Humvee. We ran over an IED. I was ejected from the vehicle and I was instantly paralyzed.
When Josh returned to us injured, it was definitely life-changing, not only for me, but for my entire family. No one is ever prepared to or expects something like this is going to happen to them.
The Elizabeth Dole Foundation funded the RAND Corporation to do a large study on military caregivers, and its findings are impressive. They estimate 5.5 million caregivers of veterans, and 1.1 million of those are taking care of post 9/11 veterans. It's so important for VA to develop programming and provide supports and services to caregivers of veterans.
For the specific family caregiver program, the initial eligibility is that you have to have been released on or after September 11th, 2001, and have a service-connected related injury or illness that happened in the line of duty. And after that, we have to determine if you're clinically eligible. And what we're looking for is the kinds of needs the veteran has in the home.
Ms. Hyman, how are things going with you? How's your stress level been?
I can share many different stories about caregivers who were so thrilled the first time a nurse came out to their home to do a home visit and couldn't believe that the nurse was asking them how they were doing and how they felt and how they were being impacted by what was going on. Caregiver support coordinators hear from caregivers about how much the program has changed their lives.
The service that I am most blessed with is the caregiver's stipend. That has enabled me to continue to support and contribute to the family financially, because there's no way that I could have a job outside of my full-time caregiving responsibilities. Another thing that the stipend does is I feel like it validates me. It validates my job, the importance of what I do.
One of the biggest issues that I hear is the need for respite care for the caregiver. The stress that they incur while having to take care of a loved one can be pretty daunting, and it's constant, and they need some kind of break for someone to come in and help them take care of the veteran while they step away from the situation temporarily.
We imagined that that support line would exist for maybe a year or so, and we imagined that most of the questions would be about this stipend program for those who are caring for post 9/11 veterans. Most of the caregivers who call are caring for veterans of the Korean era, the Vietnam era, the World War II era. We have just celebrated the 3rd anniversary of the Caregiver Support Line, and the support line has received more than 125,000 calls.
The OAF, OIF, OND era veteran, these veterans are very, very young, and they have come back with a complexity of injuries and illnesses.
I think it's important that veterans are taken care of in their own home from a psychological standpoint. Instead of going to a nursing home, they can receive their care from someone that they love and that they trust.
My first initial rollout was 19 caregivers were identified initially in May of 2011, and I'm up to 176 caregivers and still counting. I know over the nation, I think we probably tripled the expectation at this point. So we haven't looked back, and we are just blazing ahead at lightning speed with this program.
We've been very excited that military caregiving has been a focus of joining forces for Michelle Obama and Dr. Jill Biden. It's really, I think, raised the profile and allowed us to put more focus and attention on caregivers of veterans.
Family members are going to be caring for our veterans for a long time. We've seen that evidence by previous eras. We believe when we take care of the family members who care for our veterans do better.
I really have to spend a lot of time and energy devoted to daily care that I once took for granted. And it's so awesome that the VA is providing for me to be back in my home and to have the best people who love me unconditionally take care of me.
No one can take better care of him than I can. And it's my privilege and my honor to care for him in my home.
All right, so I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer Hopek.
All right, next slide. Okay, so the VA offers numerous services for veterans and caregivers that allow them to maintain the highest level of independence and to age in place. And so we know the VA is a very hard system to navigate those. So we're going to give you kind of a broad overview of the many different services that VA offers that do support caregivers. So we're going to go over services outside of caregiver support that help supplement care in the home. Those things can include respite care, home telehealth, our home-based primary care teams, and other services. We're going to talk about the big world of program of general caregiver support services. So that really encompasses the services that we provide to all caregivers. And then Carol is going to take over after that, and she's going to talk about the program of comprehensive assistance for family caregivers. I'm just going to provide some more details about that, including our updated eligibility. In that video you just saw, that was done prior to our expansion to veterans of other eras. And so the eligibility criteria from the video you just watched has changed. So we will be talking about that towards the end of our presentation. Next slide. So the program of general caregiver support encompasses veterans of all eras. So general caregiver for that program is just defined as someone who provides personal care services to a veteran. It's one or more activity of daily living. So those are things like bathing, dressing, grooming, brushing teeth, that basic hygiene, or who needs supervision or protection based on symptoms of neurological care or other impairment or injury. So really that they are unable to operate independently in the community. Next slide. So the program of general caregiver support at each facility may offer different services. So it's really important that you connect to your local facility to kind of see what they're offering. Some things that we have, oh, the screen went blank, Angela, just, okay, there we go. So some things that you may see at your local facilities, maybe support groups for different caregivers with different diagnoses. So we have a dementia caregiver support group here at the Southern Arizona VA, and we have one for general caregivers. You may see grief support groups. So there's a wide variety of things that happen at the local VAs that are very specific to that VA. So we're also going to be providing some resources at the national level. So our National Caregiver Support Program also has a lot of resources. So we're kind of going to give you more of the national overview right now. So we do resource and referral internally. So we help people navigate the VA. As we just said, it's a really big system. And so just even the word caregiver can mean so many different things when you call the VA. So a veteran calls and says, I need help with caregiving. Sometimes they'll get to the caregiver support program, and what they're asking for is maybe a home health aide, some help in the home, maybe they need nursing home placement, but we're here to help them navigate this system. So when they say that word, they get to us, there's no wrong door. We're going to help them get to the place they need to be to get the services they need to stay as independent as possible. We have education, training, and support. We're going to go over multiple things, include our Building Better Caregivers program, the Caregiver Support Line, which you saw referenced in that video. We have monthly education calls. We provide an excellent program called Reach VA. We have self-care courses, peer mentoring, and then our VA Caregiver Support website is very extensive and has a lot of great information on there. And then we are able to offer counseling to our caregivers when the counseling is related to the veteran's disability to really help support the caregiver and to make sure that they are providing or getting all the care they need in order to provide the best support to the veteran. Next slide. So as part of VA's long-term care services, we have multiple things that we can offer. And again, when I say people call in and ask for caregiving, sometimes they're referring to the things on the screen right now. So some of the things that VA is able to provide, depending on the clinical need, these are things that the veteran would talk to their primary care doctor about to see if they would meet criteria or they would benefit from these things. So we have in-home care to include skilled nursing, which can help with medication management, wound care. We have home health aides. Those are contracted agencies that go out to the veteran's home anywhere from 2 to 5 days a week for a couple hours to provide assistance with ADLs, so bathing, dressing, grooming. We have an excellent home-based primary care program, and that program brings the primary care to the veteran in their home. So it's really for our mostly homebound veterans or veterans who are unable to come into the main facility or a CBOC for any reason. CBOC is our community outpatient clinics. So those home-based primary care teams are made up of social workers, occupational therapists, pharmacists, psychologists, a primary care doctor, and RNs. And they really provide wraparound supports to veterans in their home. We have our veteran-directed home and community-based care program. So that program is specific to VAs. You should see it rolling out to all of VAs over the next 5 years and VAs, long-term planning. But veteran-directed care really helps put the power of organizing care needs into the veteran's hands. And it's a collaboration with the VA and the local area agency on aging. And so again, that's specific to different VAs. Here at the Southern Arizona VA, we've had that program for about 4 years, and we are looking to expand it. But it's a great resource for veterans who are able to manage a budget and to hire their own caregivers to allow them to remain in their home. Respite care. Respite care, we referenced in that video as well, is so important for caregivers to be able to take a break. And so respite care can be, once again, ordered through the primary care doctor. For most veterans, it's up to 30 days a year in 6-hour shifts, and that's provided by an outside agency. And we also have our adult day healthcare program, which is at a facility. Veterans can go there and get taken care of for the day. All right, equipment and supplies. Always reach out to the primary care team if a veteran is in need, or encourage them to, of any equipment and supplies. The VA can often support veterans with multiple things that maybe they can't get in a normal community setting. So we always encourage them to talk to their doctor if they need anything, including home modifications to support their independence. Next slide. So our Building Better Caregivers program is a 6-week online workshop. And that really just covers a lot of great things to make sure that caregivers are taking care of themselves. They know the basics of caregiving. And following that, they get to engage with peer-to-peer support and participate in an online alumni community. We've had a lot of great feedback from Building Better Caregivers. It's a great place for caregivers to start interacting with other caregivers and just kind of getting the nuts and bolts of self-care down. Next slide. Our National Caregiver Support Line is available for anyone to call Monday through Friday, 8 to 8. They will provide immediate on-the-spot support to caregivers. And if there's follow-up needed, they'll link them to the local VA that's closest to them to get them that support. Currently, the Caregiver Support Line is also handling information on appeals as well for anybody who's applied to our program. It's a really excellent resource. And we, if there's one thing you take away from our training today, write down the Caregiver Support Line number. So you have that to hand out to veterans and caregivers you're interacting with. Next slide. All right, so we have the Caregiver Support Line provides annual trainings to caregivers. They can access this from their home at any time. They're also recorded on the website, which we're going to give you later. So really a great educational resource for those who are in rural areas, who maybe can't come into the local facility. They still have access to all of these amazing training calls. I believe last month's was on intimacy, which we know can be such a heavy topic for caregivers, because sometimes their role, if it's a spouse, the role has changed in the marriage. And so how do you still facilitate that? And how do you look at intimacy in a different way? And so that is just a really great resource. And again, those are recorded and also available on the website. Next slide. All right, Reach VA. So Reach VA can be specific to different diagnoses. We have specialized curriculum for veterans with, or caregivers of veterans with ALS, dementia, PTSD, and spinal cord injury. Most or all sites have staff who are trained in providing Reach. We also have national Reach facilitators. It can be done in a group setting or individual. And really, again, just provides that one-on-one support to do some solution-focused problem solving around something that's happening. So maybe, somebody's really struggling with getting the veteran to bathe. That can sometimes, as we get older, that can be a really challenging thing. So we can do some really solution-focused problem solving around that, provide support around to the caregiver, and help build some skills around how we handle these stressors that come along with caregiving. Next slide. All right. And our self-care courses. Self-care, I think, has been a catchphrase for the last 2 years as we've navigated COVID-19 and all the challenges for all of us. But we know that caregivers tend to put themselves last. They're constantly caring for someone else, and they think of their own needs separately. And we really want to break that cycle. And we do that through talking about self-care a lot and through the use of respite care. You can't take care of someone else if you're not taking care of yourself, whether that be physically or emotionally. We need to make sure that caregivers have the time, have the knowledge, and have the knowledge to do that. So we provide these 3-hour caregiver support self-care courses, both at the national and local levels. We've also partnered with lots of agencies, including the Red Cross, who comes in and does self-care courses as well. So it's really a community effort in making sure our caregivers are taken care of. Next slide. All right, peer support mentoring. What a better, a better person to help somebody navigate than somebody who's been there before. So at the national level, they can match peers, caregivers. So they try to look at somebody who's been in the kind of the same type of caregiving you have and match, just to have an ear to listen to, someone who's been there and to give advice. And so that's a really great resource. So again, we have at the national level. Next slide. All right. There's the great caregiver support website. Highly and also suggest you bookmark that. It has an application to our program directly on the website, access to all of our educational materials. There's also some changes happening at the national level with the caregiver support program. And all of the updates for the program will be on that website as they come down. So a great thing to bookmark. Next slide. All right, I just kind of went over all of that. The other thing that is important to note on that is if you need to know who your local caregiver support team is closest to you, you can access that on the website. You can also always call the caregiver support hotline and get redirected to your local facility. They'll put in an alert for us and make sure that we reach out to the veteran and caregiver. So we try to do as much of the legwork for everyone as possible to make it as easy to reach us as it can be. Next slide. All right. So our favorite month of the year is November. It's when we get to recognize our family caregivers. This is the national recognition, not just specific to veteran caregivers. We do things throughout the month to include workshops, resource fairs. We have self-care days. We have done some yoga for caregivers, journaling clubs. We really also try to bring community awareness to our programs and collaboration through our summits. So you may have attended a summit in your area, but those are just really a chance for us to collaborate and talk about best practices for serving our caregivers. And so again, it's one of our favorite months of the year, and really we love to highlight the amazing work that our caregivers do. Next slide. All right, we have another great video for you, and then I'm going to be handing it over to Carol.
I'm Jenna, and I'm the wife of Curtis, who is a retired Marine. He was medically retired after an injury, and I'm now his caregiver. I've had to learn to be his eyes and be his ears, and my role has, I would even say, drastically changed through the years. He couldn't really feed himself. He couldn't, go to the bathroom in a sense. He needed help just with mobility issues. I remember there was a time when he was injured, our youngest was 6 months old, and we had come home from the hospital and we were just trying to figure out how to make things work. And I got really sick. I got pneumonia or something. And so I had been to the doctor and was on medication, and I couldn't function. And at that point, I realized I needed help, and I didn't really know what to do or where to ask.
Before she got into the VA Caregiver Program, she had an online class that she had to do. I want to say it was like 8 or 9 hours, and she had to go through the class and pass the test, and it was about things to look for as a caregiver.
I mean, I knew what the program was, but nobody had really come to me and said, do you know that you qualify for this? I guess I was looking through some resources and I realized, oh my goodness, I actually qualify for this program.
She gets money for taking care of me. They rate you they rate you on a scale of how much help that you need, and then based on that, they pay you. They say you get an X amount of hours per month that you would need someone to take care of you, and so therefore they pay your caregiver. And it doesn't have to be your wife. It can be your father, your mother, your girlfriend, your brother, whoever is your primary caregiver that takes care of you and helps you.
So through the VA Caregiver Support, they've given me great resources. If it weren't for the VA, there are times I don't know financially what we would do. I also don't know sometimes medically what we would do.
And that definitely offsets a lot of expenses, because she does have to miss work from time to time to take me to doctor's appointments. So that really helps offset the money that we'd lose because she's not at her job.
All right, let's go to the next slide. So the Program of Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers, or PCAFC, is a clinical program for eligible veterans who have incurred or aggravated a serious injury in the line of duty on or before May 7, 1975, or on or after September 1, 2001. That is phase 1 of the expansion that began on 10/1 of 2020. Phase 2 will include all eras of veterans, and they will be eligible for benefits October 1, 2022. Go ahead and start the next slide. So veterans may be eligible for this clinical program first if they have a service-connected disability rating of 70% or more, require personal care services to perform one or more activities of daily living, or require supervision and protection, or they require the assistance of a family caregiver to live safely in a home setting. Go ahead with the next slide. The enhanced PCAFC services for eligible caregivers may include a financial stipend, access to CHAMP VA healthcare insurance if the caregiver otherwise is uninsured, mental health counseling, which is a little different than the general caregiver program, as it does not have to be involve the veteran. It could be something completely different from what the veteran's care needs for. So it's a mental health counseling specific to the caregivers for what they need. A caregiver training, a respite care that's covered under the Caregiver Support Program, Hero Miles, which allows for somebody to be flown into the family to take care of the veteran while the caregiver gets respite. It used to be multiple times a year. It is now a one-time only event that you get it one time in your time. And then travel and per diem compensation when traveling for a veteran's VA medical appointment. I think the best way to understand that is from our facility, we send a lot of the spinal cord injury veterans to San Diego. And so their care, the per diem compensation is cared for the caregiver that is required to go with the veteran to those appointments. Next slide. So the application process is a little daunting. It's 10 steps. And the first is the application submission. You can log on to that website if you know somebody or want to give that to somebody that you feel might be eligible for the program. They can apply online. So the application submission can be done online. It can be mailed in. It could be faxed to the local facility. It could be hand delivered to the local facility. Application intake would occur within 5 days, hopefully. And that would be just getting the basic information on whether a caregiver and veteran meet the minimal requirements for the program. And then after that, there is an in-depth veteran assessment, caregiver assessment, functional assessment, initial application review or collaboration with the primary care providers. And then it goes to the centralized eligibility team to review. Then after those first 6 steps, there's 4 more steps. If they are determined that they meet the initial criteria, they'll continue with the application, which will involve the caregiver training, home care assessment, final application review, and then yay, notification. So next slide, please. So the role of the Caregiver Support Program team is multidisciplinary, and it's made up of individuals throughout the medical center who support the veterans and caregivers applying or participating in PCAFC. They serve as an advocate. They provide education and information. They help to engage the veterans and the family caregivers throughout the application process, responding to the veteran and caregiver questions and concerns, and complete wellness contacts with the veteran and family caregivers every 120 days. In addition to that, there's an annual reassessment and an in-home visit that occurs to approved family caregivers in the PCAFC program. Next slide. Oh, it's a video. Let's watch the video.
I was in the Army from 1956 to 1976.
Well, we met on a blind date many years ago, like 55 plus years ago, and he just knocked me off my feet.
I was diagnosed June of 2003.
They're a very, very close couple who, as the disease progressed, Dale has taken on more and more of his care.
She feeds me. I mean, she cooks for me. And she gets me where I got to go. And she puts Bactine on my scrapes and helps me bathe and dress. She has good taste in shirts. And she puts me to bed at night.
He falls almost every day. I don't think we've had it hardly, maybe 2 or 3 days that he hasn't fallen. And they're always near falls. Had a terrible fall in the garage and hit his head, and you know, the blood was spewing, and we ended up going to the emergency room.
I've been fortunate. Only thing I've broken is a couple of fingers so far.
To see it is very scary, and you just kind of feel like you're sitting on I feel like I'm sitting on a keg of dynamite.
I think it's normal to have negative feelings when you're dealing with something that's very difficult.
I don't scream, but I talk louder. One day, Jerry said, I said something about, please don't do that. And I didn't think about it, but he said, you didn't ask me that very nice. And I said, well, I said please. He said, but you used please like a four-letter word. I said, I'm sorry.
Many caregivers will mention that they feel guilty that they're not able to do more, or that they feel guilty about their negative emotions. And the first question I ask them is, do they think that they're perfect?
I'm a human being, you know, and I do make mistakes, and good Lord does forgive me, and I have to forgive myself.
As Parkinson's disease progresses, the relationship with their spouse changes a lot.
When you become a caregiver for someone with Parkinson's disease or a serious disease, the number of hats you wear increases, and the frequency with which you wear those hats increases.
I worry about the role change that's happened, you know, and that's just really very difficult.
So an example of that may be that the spouse is now having to manage and take care of all finances, or manage and take care of yard work outside.
Making decisions by myself or discussing it with the kids, because Jerry, really, we're not discussing those kind of things that much anymore.
Caregivers often describe a loss of relationship, and what that really means is just the shared intimacy they've had over years can be really impaired.
That's one of the hardest things that we've lost. Is the intimacy we had. But you know, we hug, we kiss. You know, when I go in to get him up in the morning, I always give him a big kiss, and we never go to bed without kissing each other goodnight.
When you have Parkinson's disease, there's so much decline in your facial expression and your gestures that it's often hard to tell what a person with Parkinson's disease is feeling unless they really tell you.
With the masking that comes along with Parkinson's, you can't tell whether he's laughing or not.
So really working hard to communicate about what's going on with them, and asking their spouse about how they're doing is a very helpful thing.
Talk to each other about it. I think you really need to talk about some hard things.
People who feel like they want to be heroes, or that it's their duty to be 24/7, always, typically burn out.
I knew I couldn't do it all. And that's the reason another reason I got help early on, and I also started thinning out my own activities, because I find when I'm trying to do too much that I get really short and I get really tired.
Well, caregiving is hard on a caregiver. And there has to be some time of relief.
Assessing for caregiver strain, if we want to use that word, is really important for clinicians to do, and it's not always easy to tell. Sometimes it's obvious. They're so stressed and they are so depleted that they can't begin to hide it.
She was talking about something and I just broke down in tears. And so yeah, a couple of times that's happened in the office.
Other times it's not as obvious, even if you're sensitive to it, because the natural tendency when you're a healthy spouse, is to feel that the real focus should be on the person with the illness.
You do try to be strong though.
If caregivers seem like they have a lot of strain, I often will refer them to social workers, to psychologists, or other mental health providers for support.
We try to tailor our interventions to meet the person where he or she is. And so one day we may be doing nothing but sitting down and listening and doing supportive counseling, encouraging, and the next day we may be providing a lot of linkage to resources.
The person with Parkinson's disease often feels like all the giving is one direction. And it's so helpful when they feel like they can do something for their spouse who's doing a million different jobs and doing a million different things. And one of the things they can do is to just acknowledge how hard it is for them.
Watching my wife work to keep me going is hard. She's been with me for 55 years and has been through a lot.
I think the second thing is to encourage them to take time for themselves. And if that means somebody else has to come stay with them, or their spouse does that, that's so validating.
Well, hello there, how are you?
How's Jerry doing today?
He's doing pretty good.
Okay.
Oh, so good to see you. Jerry said he didn't really want anybody because he didn't need anybody. And I said, well, I don't know that you do, but I do. And he's really been very open to that.
It's been pretty easy for me. I'm not super self-conscious when I have to be assisted.
She's free to do many of the other things that need to be done in their home.
I've always shopped, major shopping, like once a month or so. We used to go grocery shopping together, and now I go by myself. Mainly I get produce and fresh vegetables and things like that. With two of us, there's not that much of major shopping anymore.
Caregivers who are 24/7 truly need time away.
Oh, I don't know about that. It's a little crazy. I have a group of ladies that they get together on Monday mornings, and I've just started going back, and I try to go to that group almost every Monday, but I can't always make it.
Respite care simply means time away from the duty that you have.
That can occur in the community where the patient with Parkinson's goes to a place where there's trained professionals to help care for the patient, or there can be people that come into the home and the spouse, the caregiver, can then leave and do things that she feels she needs to attend to.
I think of it as a time sort of to fill up your tank so you can come back and be re-energized to do the job at hand.
There is respite care for the VA, through VA, and like you can have a week. I think, I'm not quite sure, but I'm not ready to go there. I don't think Jerry's quite ready to go there either, so. And I'm hoping I won't have to do that, but I may.
Many people have many built-in supports, either through their church or their family or just their social circle.
Your friends and loved ones want to help you, and that's their way of sharing, you know, and their way of being a part of the friendship, you know. And when you let people help you, it's such a blessing for them and for you.
I think there are also some great caregiver support groups out there for Parkinson's disease.
She has her Bible study group that she meets with.
We both have really strong faith, and that's just been really wonderful. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that.
Caregiving is just simply hard, and that as a provider, healthcare provider, it's as important to care for the caregiver as it is for the person with Parkinson's disease.
We need to tell caregivers that they're doing a tremendous job, and their job is obviously incredibly important, and that they're a valuable member of the care team.
Many caregivers describe a silver lining of caregiving. They talk about meeting people that they wouldn't have ever met before. They talk about a closeness of relationship because they need each other more.
Life was not perfect, and life does have lots of pain with it. But there is a lot of good that comes out of those things. You know, I've seen it through my life over and over again.
Some people have talked about the personal growth that they themselves have achieved by doing something so difficult and recognizing that not only did they do it, but they did it pretty darn well.
All right, we're going to stop this video. In the interest of time, I'm going to go through the amazing partnerships that we've had through all of our communities, both the community partners and the veteran partners. We can't do it alone. There's just too much to do for the caregivers. So local and national area agencies on aging, the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, the American Red Cross, Be Connected, Alzheimer's Association, the local community senior agencies, local hospice agencies, and so many more that we haven't even mentioned. The Area Agency on Aging, go to the next slide, is a public nonprofit private agency that helps older Arizonans that are in need, and they coordinate care through the counties. So there's Maricopa County, Pima, Yavapai, Mojave, La Paz, and Yuma counties, Pinal. So each county in our state has their own specific area agency on aging and their own specific programs that they utilize and provide. Next slide, please. Additionally, the Elizabeth Dole Foundation has respite relief for military and veteran caregivers through Hidden Heroes. Hidden Heroes is amazing, and I don't have the time to go into it. I would go to the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and just research more of it. Kids, youth, and families through Hidden Heroes, and the Campaign for Inclusive Care, which we also talked about, is part of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation as well. Go ahead with the next slide. Through the American Red Cross is the Military Veteran Caregiver Network that helps caregivers of all eras at all stages of caregiving by providing access to 3 peer support programs: online peer support, peer mentoring support program, and peer support groups. They also help caregivers of all eras and all stages, including partners and supporters, by providing access to 2 public caregiver-focused services: Resource Library and a master calendar. And please go for more information on that, go to info.mvcn@redcross.org. Next slide. Sorry, I feel like I'm rushing through this, but I want to leave time for questions. And finally, for the Caregiver Support Program, again, our National Caregiver Support Line is 1-855-260-3274, and our website is www.caregiver.va.gov. You will have everything you need to know about the VA Caregiver Support Program, both the general program and the program of comprehensive assistance for family caregivers on that website. Everything, even the updates to the expansion and what's happening, current events that are happening within the Caregiver Support Program right now. Next slide. Is that it? That's it. All right. Now we have time for questions.
You can go ahead and, oh, sorry.
I was going to say the same thing. Just feel free to put any questions or comments that you have in the chat box. And just a reminder that these slides, along with all the other resources for the symposium, are available online. So I'll just read out the questions if that's okay.
Yeah.
Question from Michelle. I'm curious about grief support and when the caregiver role ends, what services are available for grief support?
Mm-hmm. So I can speak a little, that may be specific to your local facility, the resources they have. That's something that we are working at the Southern Arizona VA. We do provide individual grief support to caregivers. We also check in after a veteran has passed to help with decedent affairs, offer resources. We have a grief packet we send out, and we're actually looking at holding a grief support group. In different facilities that may look different, but we definitely collaborate with our local hospice agencies who have grief support groups in the community. And we try to get those connections made ahead of time. So each facility, would have the availability of what they have in their community. Does that answer your question, Michelle? All right.
Great. And then a question from Glenn. Are these services available to caregivers providing care for a disabled dependent of a veteran?
If I'm seeing the question or hearing the question correctly, are these services available to a caregiver providing care for a disabled dependent of a veteran? No, the services would be provided to the caregiver providing care for a veteran only, not the dependent.
Any other questions or comments that you would like to share? We still have about 5 minutes or so. Okay, so it looks like no other comments are coming in. Would you like me to go back to that video that we didn't watch?
Sure, that just captures the caregiver journey map. That is the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. It just really goes over, we can end on that, the journey of a caregiver. So thank you all for joining us as we end on this note. We appreciate it.
A family member, a spouse, a friend. Military and veteran caregivers surround us every day. Military and veteran caregivers are in every community. They are courageous, strong, and compassionate, providing around-the-clock care and support to our nation's veterans and service members. They are our nation's hidden heroes. A caregiver's journey can be emotional, isolating, and difficult. Military and veteran caregivers don't often ask for help, but they deserve our support. In order to build a community that provides the right support to caregivers when they need it most, we must first understand who caregivers are and the journey they are on. Introducing the Military and Veteran Caregiver Experience Map, a project of the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and Philips. The map identifies key moments, obstacles, and milestones that military and veteran caregivers of all backgrounds face. The primary goal? To help caregivers feel less isolated on their journeys and plot a path for supporters to provide the right care at the right time. We've mapped out 3 distinct stages of the caregiver journey: becoming aware and adjusting, shifting priorities and seeking help, and finding a rhythm. Across each of these stages, caregivers experience unique emotions and needs, and each stage requires targeted support and attention. Learn how you can embark on the caregiver journey at caregiverjourney.org.
Thank you again for joining us.